So good to see you. Hello and welcome to episode 33 of Control All Defense with Vishnu and me. We are so glad you enjoyed our first episode of 2026 as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. And we're getting straight into the second episode of the year. And we're going to dive straight into it because Vishnu, this is as big as it gets.
Yeah.
And we had no doubt in our mind that this was going to be our topic because starting about 4 or 5 days ago, there's been this flood of articles in the media, detailed articles about how the Indian Air Force is basically shaping up on a deal for 114 Rafale fighters. Now, the background, of course, very quickly for those who aren't in the know, and we know that Control All Defense viewers and listeners know this already, but for the others, the Indian Air Force has operated Rafale fighters since 2020. 36 of those aircraft were delivered at that time. So we now have 36 Rafale fighters across 2 squadrons. One is based in Ambala in Haryana. The other is based in Hashimara in North Bengal. The Indian Navy last year placed an order for 26 naval versions of the Rafale. But separate from these 2 deals, there's been a requirement for 114 fighter aircraft, which up until this point, the Indian Air Force, Vishnu, had projected as some kind of a decision to be made. You know, it was not confirmed that they would go in for more Rafales. It could be the Rafale, it could be a bunch of other fighters, reminiscent of the notorious MMRCA contest of about a decade ago, which didn't really result in anything. So very interesting development now with these reports. And I want to ask you that question right off. How true are these reports, Vishnu, that the Indian Air Force is, nothing is confirmed until a deal is signed, obviously. But basically, the essence of what we're hearing is that the Indian Air Force has said, we don't want to waste time looking at other fighters now. We already have the Rafale. We have a requirement for 114, which is basically about 5 or 6 squadrons more. Let's just get more Rafales. And that's what they've told the Ministry of Defense.
So I think at one level, some of these reports are kite flying. Now, that isn't to say that this will not ultimately happen.
Yeah.
Since you asked me, I had to answer the question. But my question is this, assuming that, it's not kite flying and it turns out to be more grounded, and that will only happen if there is an acceptance of necessity, which is cleared. It goes to the CCS, the Cabinet Committee on Security. It is closed out. Then you sign a contract. And then what about the other MRFA competitors? They must be feeling pretty damn awful today when they hear or they read articles which say that, we already picked somebody else because none of them have got an email saying, sorry, you've not made it. You've not made the cut. And then you likely have, these, whether it's Lockheed Martin or Boeing, or Eurofighter, or Sukhoi,
Gripen,
or Saab, calling up saying, "Did we just lose that competition?" But what's wrong with a bit of kite flying?
Yeah.
Look, Shiv, that Rafale thing is going to happen. I would suggest that it's not there yet, but it will ultimately happen. And assuming it does, I have one basic question. If you are going to buy 114 Rafales now, what stopped you from actually taking that decision 10 years back?
Yeah.
Right? Or when you went in for the 36? Why stop there then? When everybody said 36 is by no means 2 squadrons going to be enough. This is the future projection. It's similar in a sense to how we do urban planning in our city. We don't do it.
Yeah.
When there is traffic, we build a flyover and we only keep that flyover to a certain length. Right? We don't really look into the future and think about where we need to expand that flyover.
Yeah.
But then we ultimately do, and then people suffer as a result of that. It's the same thing.
No, this conversation is going to take us through some painful junctions. I already know that. But the one thing that can be said about Indian defense procurement, for all its pains and tribulations, hindsight is 2020. You always look backwards and see, we should have done this, we should have done this. We can take this back to the mirages, and I'm getting a sense of deja vu on that because we've discussed this before in a previous episode. But this makes things a little new because, like you rightly said, Vishnu, I think the first question that should occur to anyone is, if you had spent all that energy choosing the Rafale all those years ago, why didn't we commit to more numbers and at least move towards
Consolidating.
a deal,
Yeah.
and this particular deal for 114, if it were to happen, if it actually becomes a reality, Make in India is a large piece of it,
Yeah, it
where
is.
many of those aircraft will be
What's the
built
percentage
here
that we're
in
looking
India.
at? What did the article say?
I think
Above
I've seen a
30%.
bunch of different things, including some TV reports, where one of them says it's 18 aircraft, 14 to 18 aircraft
Fly away. Yeah.
and the rest will be assembled / manufactured here
With
in
growing
India.
levels of indigenous
Indigenization.
content. So here's what it's going to be, Shiv. Now the Rafale has plenty of life left in it, but it's the last fourth generation fighter that the French are building.
Yeah.
They're already into the sixth generation, which they're co-developing or plan to co-develop with other European partners. So India, as is very much the customary case, is last
Yeah.
onto the boat. And so you are now getting into technology which is already, in a sense, some of it is dated, the stealth aspect of it. Now, all the Mirage and all the Dassault boffins will be hammering me on my head with this, saying, how do you say that it's outdated? I'm only saying that it's outdated in the realm of stealth. That isn't to say it isn't stealthy in itself. It's got a very low radar profile, and therefore it is hard to detect. It's state-of-the-art inside for various reasons. But the world has now decisively moved to stealth platforms.
Yeah.
The Chinese have 200 J20s, as we say. They've got J35s, which are coming in. They've got their sixth generation platforms, at least two of them, extremely advanced stealth drones as well, of differing capabilities and sizes. And we are now buying a Gen 4.5 aircraft. The flip side of that argument is that Gen 4.5 aircraft that you are potentially getting, the Rafale, is so advanced in terms of its avionics and some of its weapon systems that if you really operate it to its true potential, the Air Force at some level would believe that, no, we have a chance in defending ourselves.
Yeah.
It is also a fact that we are developing the AMCA India stealth fighter side by side, but that has to go through the entire system of iteration.
Yeah, that's a long way off. Yeah.
In the meanwhile, you need this to replace the Mirages, replace the Jaguars, replace the MiG-29s, and I would suggest that some of the Sukhois as well. I don't know if you're going to upgrade all 270 odd of them.
Yeah.
This is a more advanced platform.
Yeah. Let's look at the pros and cons of this Rafale deal, because I suspect, Vishnu, that's where the real sort of meat of this conversation is going to be. Because let's talk about the pros first. The pros are that India already operates the Rafale. India has started to notch up combat hours on the Rafale thanks to Operation Sindoor. India has spent a pretty penny acquiring the Rafale already, including the India-specific enhancements, which I shall get you to list for the 8th time. India has...
The Rafale sent in a signed missile into Pakistan. Did I just say something new and never said before?
You've never said it before, and we shall make that a headline here.
Apparently, our people
like
were,
the Ravina Tandon.
Yeah.
Like Ravina Tandon.
Yeah, something like that.
Lovely. Okay. No, of course, that's going to be something we will talk about a little bit more. But so the pros, what I said was the Indian Air Force already operates them. We've spent a bomb of money buying these aircraft. All of them fly away.
Yeah.
Lots of money has been sunk into India-specific enhancements, threat libraries, special capabilities, certain amounts of equipment, readiness for Indian weaponry, etc., etc., etc. Commonality is a big feature because the Indian Navy will soon operate the Rafale as well.
Yeah.
So there are lots of economies to be had when you've got two services operating the same aircraft. You've got a tremendous amount of support infrastructure that exists in 3 airfields, Hashimara, Ambala, and Gwalior for the Rafale. Those are the pros as far as the Rafale is concerned. The cons is where things take a dark turn. The price tag for 114 Rafales is, according to some of these reports, about 3.25 lakh crore rupees, which is not a modest percentage of your defense budget.
Except it doesn't all go out at once.
It goes in installments. It's installments, but it's a commitment.
Yeah.
It's like a bank EMI.
Yeah.
You can't get out of it.
Yeah, you can't.
You've got to pay it at some point of time. So it's you're locked into it, right?
Yeah.
That's one. Number two, as a result of that huge budget commitment, which you're locked into because of this huge price tag,
Yeah.
something else will have to suffer.
Yeah.
Will have to be deprioritized. And I think what you just mentioned is where it's at, Vishnu.
Yeah.
Your stealth, your indigenous aircraft capabilities, your Tejas Mk2,
Yeah.
your AMCA,
Yeah.
anything else that you're planning to do is going to have to, pump the brakes. You can't have everything.
No, you can't have everything, but the Air Force has pretty much realized that this is what they want. You know, what might be interesting, Shiv, is if we take a look at the capability that the new Rafales will be bringing in. Would you like to do that? Should we?
First, I want you to comment on the cons that I just
cons?
talked about. The cost and, how much of a consideration is that? Because it's an eye-watering number. It's an eye-watering number. How does
No, Shiv, I
what
don't
is the
think there's an
calculation
option.
that the Indian Air Force has for this?
You don't have an option. It's as simple as that. If the Indian Air Force had an option, they would have gone for a fifth generation plus stealth platform. They are not buying the F-35 because they can't buy it. The Americans won't buy it, sell it to you because of the S-400. The AMCA is nowhere, in terms of being prototype ready. Forget about being ready for service. The European competitors, nations who are building the stealth platforms are still at least 10 years away from doing that. The Koreans have a stealth platform, which is still very much in its infancy. The Turkish have built one. We aren't exactly going to Turkey and saying, let's get into a deal. So therefore, what are you left with? You are left with the most competent. That's true. We are left with the Russians and the Su-57. That's a separate story because many people
We have a full episode on that, by the way.
Many people say that, look, that's not truly a stealthy aircraft in the way that you want to. It's a great aircraft in other ways, but when it comes to integrated avionics and weapon systems, the Rafale is as good as any plane that exists. And in terms of its electronic warfare suite, it's right there. To answer your question very briefly, India has no choice. The Air Force has vouched for this aircraft. I have never, ever found any disagreement within the Air Force in dozens of pilots and senior ranks I've spoken to on the Rafale. They love that aircraft, which isn't to say that they didn't like the Gripen. They really like the aircraft. But the Rafale is more capable. It's as simple as that. It's a larger platform, carries more, arguably better systems integration, avionics integration. The fact that it's French, it doesn't have an American engine, it takes care of that little worry that some of our defense planners have, which is that, what if America stops or starts being a bully? What if they start laying conditions on the use of engine? What if spare parts don't come? We've had that experience during the Tejas development. So this is an out-and-out French fighter. It does have a few American components, but it's a huge advantage for us to be having a French platform. And I can also tell you, Shiv, that the F4 and F5, ultimately F5 that we are going to get, it's better than what we have now. The French are the shrewdest businessmen that you will find. They will sell you anything, but they will charge you They will charge
top dollar,
So, we operate a variant called the F3 Plus or the F3I, which is an India-specific variant. It's more, when we acquired it, it was more advanced than anything that the French operated. It had lots of India-specific upgrades. It still does, obviously. It's got a Targo 2 helmet-mounted sight, which is an Israeli one, which the Air Force loved. It was integrated into that French platform, not what the French had originally planned. High-altitude performance taken care of. Additional modes in the Rafale RBE-2 radar. In the RBE-2 radar, which is an ASA radar. We've got a attached decoy, a towed decoy system. And you've got a couple of other important things. The SATCOM system, I believe there are potentially some changes in the fuselage as well. The weapons control system may also have been tweaked with to suit India's requirements. But what we are likely getting now is at least the F4 and then the F5. So what is the difference between the Rafale F4 and the F5? The F4 is now the latest variant in service. It has upgrades to the digital jammer, the Spectra, which is a piece of art.
It did amazingly during Operation Sindoor.
During Operation Sindoor. Again, that's something the Air Force will not talk about, but I can tell you that my sense is that it did brilliantly well. It is, the ability to confuse incoming missiles the ability to operate automatically across various modes, offering pretty much 360-degree, protection for the aircraft. That's absolutely brilliant. So the F4 will have an advanced variant of that. They will have additional modes on the RB2 ASA radar, including a ground mobile target indication system, which is better than what we have. So it's better in many of those respects. The Rafale F5 will be taking it to the next level, where while the F4 would work better in a formation of Rafales, right? The F5 would be the leader of a squadron of loyal wingmen.
Yeah.
So that's where the French see the F5 really going. They see AI coming in a very big way. The radar itself is going to be called the RB2X radar. It's going to be using, it's going to be different. I think gallium nitride is what they would use for that particular radar. So that's going to be and different weapon systems and different logic in some of the weapon systems. There'll be a great deal more integration with AI as well.
Yeah.
The Rafale faces one problem by virtue of its design. The number of TR capsules, transmit receive nodes on its radar are fewer because the nose is a bit smaller than aircraft such as the Eurofighter. So if you have fewer nodes, the conventional wisdom is that you would have less of an ability to see up and down and wherever you want to see. But then you add computing power massively, then perhaps you might be able to
compensate for that.
The newer generation radars using different material, GAN radars, that really takes it to the next level. And that's what the F5 would likely have.
Yeah.
So the question is, has the Air Force gamed this enough looking into the future? Will these Rafales be able to defend us against at least the J-20 platform? And they're banking on it to be able to do that.
Yeah,
just because of the avionics.
Yeah, we've done an episode in the past where we've actually war gamed a kind of worst case scenario as far as aircraft are concerned. If we're not able to get stealth fighters, what can we do in the face of enemy stealth fighters? And we've done that. You can look at that episode earlier. But Vishnu, again, I'm harping on this price tag once again because you said something very important. You said we've got no choice.
Yeah, none.
Okay. The benchmark is that the Indian Air Force is supposed to have 42 and a half combat squadrons. We're currently hovering just around 29 to 30 squadrons, which is dangerously low if you look at that benchmark. Some would argue that you don't need so many squadrons and that number itself ought to be revised. But the Air Force will go with what the conventional benchmark currently is, and that's 42 and a half. But the question I want to ask you now, and I want to explore with you now, is whether such a huge induction of Rafale fighters, with all the attendant costs and stuff that we've just discussed threadbare, can that go smoothly, or will it affect our ongoing procurements of the Tejas Mk2, which hasn't even rolled out yet?
Can you imagine?
I'm wondering about that.
It's coming out in a few months.
We were actually going to do a Tejas episode.
Yeah.
And this became a Rafale episode because of the news headlines. But I have to bring in the Tejas because the Indian Air Force is officially contracted, like signed a deal for 180 Mark 1A versions of the Tejas, not a single one of which has been delivered yet, by the way. We are in 2026. And let me say, not a single one has been delivered, which is beyond shocking.
Yeah.
The Tejas Mk2 is supposed to roll out this year. You've been reporting on that, Vishnu, so we don't know.
And it takes years to be tested after that.
A rollout is like just the first little chapter of a long journey. We don't know how many of those aircraft. Some say 200, some say 150. I don't know. But what happens to those programs?
No, so look.
Because it seems a little funny talking about stealth fighters and stuff, and this is like the frontier of your fourth generation requirement. But then you've got these two big programs that are going to go into the next decade.
How is India going to afford all of this, right? Yeah. That's the question. You have invested too much in the Tejas. You can't step away from that. It lets go of the core of Atmanirbharta. You are reaching a certain amount of credibility in certain weapon systems, in avionics, integration, the actual manufacture of the jets, composite technology, the fly-by-wire control system, the radar warning receiver, all of it. Onboard oxygen generation systems, the multifunction displays, the software associated with that. You're looking to make your Indian IRSTs, in infrared search and track systems. All of that is there. It's technology being developed. It's meant for the Tejas. It's meant for the AMCA. And therefore, you can't give up on that.
Yeah.
But you do not have any way of knowing just how good this platform will be, while you do have an excellent idea of just how good the Rafale can be. Our pilots swear by it. I mean, I've spoken to so many of them. I visited the second squadron in Hashimara. I mean, young pilots, middling pilots, very senior pilots, they've flown nothing like it. And the amount of integration that it brings. So it's got the Air Force's pilots saying, no, this is really what we want. We don't seek anything else. They could easily have turned around and said, no, maybe we need to be looking at the Boeing F-15X a little
Eagle
bit more.
2.
Or the Gripen is just perfect for us, the Gripen Echo Foxtrot, or Eurofighter, or whatever it is. But the fact that or the Su-35, the fact that you absolutely insist that, no, this is the one that we want, is because the Air Force feels that this is what they can go to war with.
Yeah.
And I missed an important point when we are talking about the F4 and eventually the F5. This is going to be heavily integrated with Indian weapons.
Yeah.
So that Astra Mark II, going on to an Astra Mark III, which would any designs which come along of hypersonic air-to-air missiles, extremely long-range missiles, would certainly go into the Rafale. Now, this has been a problem in the past. We wanted to integrate the Astra missile onto the Rafale. The friend said, yeah, sure, we'll do it for you. He said, no, we want to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
The friend said, no, nothing doing. We aren't giving you source codes. And if you want to integrate it, we'll do it. You pay this amount. Now, that isn't working for us. And that's where the Tejas works brilliantly, because we can fit in whatever we want onto that. But as far as the Rafale is concerned, if we are paying top dollar to the French now, then it does certainly mean that we are going to be incorporating our weapons, 100%. And why not if our weapons work? That's great. The other thing, of course, is the primary air-to-air missile has been the Meteor, which presumably is, the cat's whiskers when it comes to present-day air-to-air warfare, possibly superior to the PL-15. But the Mika missile has been outclassed, and that was the bread and butter go-to missile for the Rafale and the Mirage 2000, because it's very robust when it comes to operating at a very short range up to medium to long ranges, but it's nowhere close to a 200-kilometer mark. At some stage, the French will be developing, in fact, they're already developing the Mika NG, which presumably is what you have to incorporate, because there's no point in having a Rafale without its core weapon. So therefore, if you've got a weapon which flies well over 150 kilometers, then you've got that line of defense as well.
Yeah. I want to come...
What I would like to see, Shiv, is not just 2 Meteor missiles on board the Rafale. I'd like to see 4 on board.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures, but I'd like to know that we can fly them with 4.
Did we fire any meteors during Operation Sindoor?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, right?
Read about it in my book. But anyway, no.
What book?
I'm gonna come down from capability now to the actual. Some would say the more boring aspect. I think it's the most interesting aspect is how we're gonna build the damn thing here. Now, if you remember, Vishnu,
so
I told you this is going to be painful.
An hour to this part of the conversation.
I told you this is going to be painful, but but seriously, during the last MMRCA contest, the medium multi-role combat
that AK
aircraft,
Antony pretty much said it ain't happening
because we've got no money. At that time, HAL was supposed to be the production agency here in India. It was a mess because the French said we don't want to certify aircraft that are built by HAL. It was a morass. There was no way out of it. And we finally got 36 Rafales instead of 126, which was supposed to be the original plan. But that's separate. My question now is, Vishnu, if you remember, by the way, this is how old Control All Defense is. One of our first episodes, I think may have been episode 2 or 3, was about the Tatas tying up with Rafale and its makers to be a private agency production partner here in India for the Rafale.
One-off. It's not just the Tatas. There would be literally dozens of other Indian manufacturers who supply components.
Yeah, and but they would be the main integrator, like they are with Airbus for the C295.
Prime integrator, most likely, yeah.
So,
but it is important, Shiv, and I reiterate that in as much as the Tatas might be a partner or another big company may be a partner, there will literally be dozens of small Indian manufacturers developing components to very high precision standards. That is how the aviation ecosystem in India works.
Yeah.
That'll be huge for us.
So that'll be huge, and this is like on a more optimistic note, which is that the Tatas and the companies that you're talking about, which will obviously be tier 1, tier 2 suppliers, they've got a bunch of experience now. They're already doing a lot of this building. The Tatas themselves are doing a huge amount of aerostructure work, including the C295, the Apaches, all the rest of it in Telangana, Bangalore, and Vadodara now. So my question is, Rafale, the French government, Dassault, this is what they've wanted all along. They've been ever since India and France signed that deal for 36 Rafales in 2016. By the way, 10 years ago,
they always knew that they'll come around to buying more.
They must be looking at these headlines and saying,
"What did we tell you?"
Hello, 10 years. It took you 10 years to do this.
Yeah, and so it costs more now because there's an inflation amount. So the price discovery is on
Plus
the basis
you're buying them in smaller amounts,
Correct.
so it's bigger.
It's you're buying it. You've got a cost or price established on the basis of the naval Rafale.
Yeah.
So you negotiate on the basis of that. But if you'd ordered earlier, presumably you'd have a significant discount.
Yeah.
And this F4 we are talking about, right? A lot of the core technologies of the F4, including new modes for the radar, would presumably have been based on what India got the French to do for the India-specific upgrades for the F3I. A lot of that resulted in the F4. So we put top dollar in to manufacture a variant which the French now operate. It came through a lot of India's funding, presumably.
Yeah. I'm sure.
And so we are now buying the F4 version.
Yeah. No, India's used to being in that position where we basically bankroll the development of a weapon system and
don't buy it in numbers. Su-57.
Yeah.
We put in money over there.
That's Indian money in that
There's Indian money in that. They say, okay, it's gone. Yeah. We don't
no
want it anymore.
two-seaters, so we don't want it.
Yeah, we don't want it. Money gone.
Yeah.
And now they're back.
Yeah.
The Russians are back trying to sell us the same platform.
Sell you an aircraft that you basically paid for. It's ridiculous, and it almost literally is that simple, which is beyond tragic. But once again on the Rafale, and this is a question that a lot of people ask me all the time, Vishnu, is that what stopped India from placing an order for a whole bunch of Rafales at that time? Was it really money? People are skeptical about that answer that AK Antony gave at that time, because we all know that ultimately when it comes to defense requirements, money is no object. There's always money for weapons and defense procurements.
It is money.
It was money, It
literally was. The reason AK Antony put an end to the manufacture of the Rafales at Hindustan Aeronautics is because they realized that the price to manufacture the Rafale in India, quite besides the fact that the French wouldn't certify it if it was built over here, was just way
Much
north
higher.
Of what India could realistically afford. They looked at the price tag and they said, this is crazy. Because in as much as Rafale won the MMRCA competition in terms of being the preferred variant, preferred jet, right? After initially being thrown out of the competition, they came back into it. When they ultimately realized that the actual cost is not exactly what they negotiated on, and the actual cost is based very much on what HAL can and cannot do, and it's just way beyond.
So I want to squeeze a figure out of you then. If a Rafale off the shelf costs 100 rupees, what would a HAL manufactured Rafale have cost in that calculation?
No, at least
was it like 170?
Yeah, no. I don't know if there'd be that much of a markup, but substantially more. The overall deal cost for 126 is something India could never have done.
Yeah.
Then that entire deal also fell through, primarily because of what you said. The French said, look, we'll transfer all this technology to you. You are building this plane with your engineers who will train up, but it's you guys who do it. If there's a mess up in this cutting edge aviation technology, it's on you, it's not on us. Our guy said, no, we will build it, but if it goes wrong, we will blame
It's on you. Huh. Yeah.
And they said, no, that doesn't make sense. We can only certify what we build. Now, the French obviously are coming around to the fact that that's not going to necessarily work if you're buying 104 or selling 114 Rafales to India. So the Tatas or whichever company it is who they get into a long-term agreement with, that certification process is something the warranty process is something that will be looked at very closely.
Yeah.
And the accountability will be there, potentially in the hands of the Indian manufacturer
Yeah.
or integrator. So that's a win for India.
Yeah, that's a win for India, right? And also like with the Tata Airbus deal on the C295, I'm guessing certification and warranty responsibilities lie with the joint venture, or is it just with the Tatas? So have the foreign supplier, have they been able to find a way around that? Because that was a sticking point with the Rafale deal
What specifically?
on certification of aircraft.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, who is it on?
No, so they would have to find a solution to
Yeah.
that now. This brings me back to all of the MRCA arguments and the Anil Ambani group, which they had entered into this thing with, that they would ultimately manufacture Rafales in India. And there were so many questions that as a bit of an aside, the Anil Ambani group in Mihan, in the plant which was set up, didn't manufacture a single screw for the Rafale aircraft.
Yeah.
They were just building, components
In
for
Kanpur,
Dassault
right? Yeah.
jets, Mihan, for Dassault business jets.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and the company was run by Dassault.
Yeah.
It was headed by a Dassault boss. But look, that's gone now. I'm not sure about whether the Tatas have that Mihan facility or somebody else has it, or where this is going to be built. It's now going to be an India venture, but I think it's important that the level of integration of Indian components, the level of Atmanirbharta as it was, will go up over a period of time. It's not as if you're getting 60% indigenization from day one, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't do it like that otherwise.
So tell me something. HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, which still carries a great deal of influence and clout, and justifiably so in terms of aircraft manufacture for the military here in India. Where do they stand on this whole Rafale business? Because they
They've
want to
got
have
their
a piece
hands-
of this.
They want to have a piece of everything. They're making the Yashas trainer. They're making the Tejas Mk2. They're making the Tejas Mk2. They have to make the Tejas. They have to make the Amka. They have many helicopters, or the LUH, the LAH, the ALH, the LUH, the Rudra, other
Prachand,
helicopters
yeah.
that they're trying, the Prachand. So HAL has got it's got enough, and that's just military airspace.
Yeah.
If you look at the civilian side of things, they've gotten into an agreement with Sukhoi to manufacture potentially the
SJ-100.
Superjet in India. So
Yeah.
so let them do their stuff, and
Yeah.
they've got fires to fight as well, as we know.
Correct.
So this has to be another independent.
But that's never
venture.
stopped them from saying, hey, what the hell? How can this happen without us?
That's like a reporter saying, "I want to do this story and that story
Yeah.
as well at the same time."
Yeah. No, but you're right. You're right. But HAL has no shortage of work on its hands, but this is going to be hugely complicated. And we are in some ways on this podcast moving ahead of what these headlines report, because, like you said, there's a great deal of kite flying that's taking place. Dassault, the French, Macron's here next month, by the way, for the AI summit.
And they will be talking defense.
I'm
You can
sure
rest
they're going to be
assured.
talking defense.
The French don't miss an opportunity.
They don't miss an opportunity to talk defense. And in fact, I do know on good authority that the 114 deal for Rafales is being seen as a kind of flagship push for 2026. They want to close a deal in this calendar year, basically. I don't know if that'll happen, but the truth is, like you said, the Indian Air Force, after Operation Sindoor especially, is speaking with a greater sense of authority, is the sense I'm getting. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because they're backed by combat. They're backed by all these things that they've managed to do with these aircraft. And been able to carry those off and execute those missions with a suboptimal number of squadrons. So it's an urgent case that the Indian Air Force is pushing, which comes back to your initial point, which is they've got no choice. They've got to do this.
They've got no choice, and I will venture that, in as much as I've said that the future lies in stealth platforms, I think the Chinese and the Pakistanis would think 10 times over before they start getting aggressive with 114 Indian Air Force Rafales floating around, in addition to upgraded Sukhoi 30s. No way.
Yeah.
That's one heck of a platform.
Yeah.
And if these platforms talk to each other, if they're data linked properly, if you've got new variants of the Spectra on board, the RB2 Plus radar, it's one heck of a platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to get those weapons happening, Shiv. So I'm going beyond Astra Mark II. I'm looking at Astra Mark III. Have a different name possibly, but where you're taking out air-to-air targets at 400 kilometers. Because as we know, there are missiles now which claim to take out targets at 200 odd kilometers. The Meteor, for example. Surface-to-air missiles are already achieving way more than that. We hit that AWACS about 400 kilometers or so.
Crazy.
Crazy.
Yes,
The Americans have got a variant of a surface-to-air missile slung under the F-18s now. Because they need that range. So you need to really work it out, and we've got a lot going for us when it comes to dual pulse rocketry. We are reasonably okay with our seekers which are now coming along. Our missiles are okay. The Astra 1 has been inducted. Think about it, man. We've got an Indian air-to-air missile which the Air Force guys seem to be okay with. But we need more and we need better. If we've achieved mastery in so many areas of missile design, our own SLBM, our own IRBM, all sorts of missiles, and surely we need to have mastery as far as air-to-air missiles are also concerned. It is absolutely clear. I mean, and look at the progress we've made with the Vishorad, the Akash Prime, and a lot of them, along with their sensors. So this is an area where India needs to, and the French have just got to integrate that onto their planes. I mean, come on.
No, I mean, I think if for a deal this big, if India were to pursue it without getting its way in every possible configuration in terms of weapons and equipment, I wouldn't be surprised by it, but that would be just the latest, sort of wasted opportunity. But final question then, Vishnu, on this Rafale episode is on the engines. And we keep saying that we're going to do a separate episode on the engines, and we never end up doing it because I think we're both daunted by how much there is to say. But we will do an episode soon. But I want to talk about as we close this episode, the engines aspect of it. I can't help looking at this proposed deal as only another deal where we sink a huge amount of budget, national resources into an aircraft without getting a damn thing when it comes to engines.
So can I just...
And don't throw offsets at me. We've been down that road, painful, bitter road, where we thought that the original Rafale deal was going to bring a sort of magic rainbow of capability, including engines, thanks to offsets. That's been an absolute failure. We're going to get into trouble for saying this, but offsets have been an absolute failure.
Offsets were always going to be a failure. They are just way too difficult to implement. Then COVID came along and all these companies said, how do you expect me to manufacture? I have no people in my factory. But no, we just need to be smart about the way we do it. And I think that India is driving a hard bargain, that the entire Safran engine technology transfer deal is linked up to 114. We have great negotiators, sometimes too great, which is why nothing moves. But if the French are willing to offer us the holy grail, single crystal, forging,
gallium nitride, the rest of it.
Gallium nitride for the radars and all that. We actually made our own
those things.
Things as well. But we're okay on the radar front. But we need certainly rail technology for engines. I mean, we've got an engine called the Shakti, which powers the ALH. Very powerful engine. Performs extremely well. A lot of experience over there. We essentially want our own version of a Safran engine, developing the thrust that we want, which works for the AMCA. And of course, we've got the F414 as a backup over there. So we've got two, but I don't think the level of technology transfer being offered by the Americans would perhaps is where we would want it to be. But this is the holy grail of jet engine technology that we are talking about. Nobody really wants to sell you that. We want them, and we're willing to pay for it.
We've been trying for so long.
And so that has to happen simultaneously. Should we talk about our Rafale experiences?
Of course, go for it.
You ready?
Yep.
Ready for my AG?
Yes. Ready.
Pull up.
Oh.
Good. Are we heading again?
No.
Enough for you?
I'm fine. I'm good.
Excellent.
No problem.
Okay, now we have to switch to the attack.
Okay.
Because we are not here to only to have fun, but to protect his airbase.
Okay.
So there was this one incredible thing which was demonstrated to me when we sort of took off. This was in France, and then the plane was put in sort of a bank with the nose going down, and then the same pilot flew us 3D, right?
Yes.
He says, "Now look, hands off," and then the plane corrected itself.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, if so, basically that's one of the literally hundreds of things which assist or aid pilots. That we were completely hands off at 50 feet off the deck with 3D, the pilot telling me that, the plane is safer than me at this. And then we got into a turn pre-programmed, and I'm looking at the ocean over there, and you got to pull out this video. I think we've run it once, we'll run it again. And I'm like, hello, what's that? I mean, that is just incredible.
Yeah.
What a platform that is. There
Yeah.
are so many technologies, the man-machine interface, or the pilot the interface. It's just incredible. And I think the best experience, and Shiv, you would have seen this also, is that the cockpit interface is different in all of these fighters.
Yeah.
Different design philosophies. We have a very different design philosophy in the Tejas, which really works, by the way. It's superb. It's going to get better and more refined.
Yeah.
Designed by our pilots in the National Flight Test Center, which Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh once used to head. In fact, when I flew my Tejas sortie, he was the NFTC chief. He reminded me of that. And you've forgotten me. I said, how can I forget you?
Yeah.
He says, I was NFTC chief when you last met me, and you have forgotten that. So, so the Rafale, incredible platform. And I will showcase the modes
Yeah.
on the RB2 radar. Phew. And I flew the simulator in Hashimara, not the big one, but the laptop one.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
still a
yeah.
lot of fun, and landing it and stuff, very, very easy.
No. Yeah. I got a chance to go up in a Rafale in 2011, I think.
And we flew the Rafale, both of us.
yeah, it
And the
was-
viewers don't believe this,
Yeah.
but it happens.
It's
They let you fly at a certain altitude and do what you want. I mean, I did loops on a Rafale.
apart from the 9G and apart from all the flying, the thing that stayed with me a lot from that flight was that really very, very low altitude terrain riding mode, where you're basically on the land, was incredible. I mean, it's a pretty rudimentary capability. All aircraft have it now, but at that time it was quite something. But yeah, it's a great platform, and I just to, while I end, I want to acknowledge that there is a very vocal community out there that believes that any further import of fighter aircraft is an unthinkable waste and a scandalous waste, and it's a voice and a section that should be listened to, because this is after all about debate. They believe that we've got too much riding on indigenous aerospace for it to happen, and it's not just about capability but about sovereignty and how much more you're going to be pumping into another country's economy, etc. Those are all legitimate points of discussion and debate. The Indian Air Force has its own view on some of those things, and believe me when I say that Vishnu and I get this kind of debate point quite a lot, even when we interact with the Indian Air Force. So feel free to be very vocal in the comment section. Not that I need to tell our listeners and viewers to do
read
that.
it very carefully. We may not answer all your questions, but we both actually trawl through those questions and your answers and your comments.
Yeah. And we may even, once we have a little bit of bandwidth, try and respond to some of your specific questions there and take them up in the future episodes. But this has been a lot of fun. Vishnu, thanks very much. And we look forward to doing very much more. We've done the Rafale now. President Macron is in India next month. So we might have an update once he comes here. But as always, thanks so much for watching. See you the next time.
Goodbye.